Hello and welcome to She the People. Today we have with us a well known author and columnist, Aparna Piramal Raje. She has been the CEO of a leading furniture company. Aparna's latest book is titled Chemical Khichdi, in which she talks about living with bipolarity and dives deep into how she dealt with it. So, without wasting much time, let's welcome her and take this conversation ahead. Hi, I welcome you to She the People.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Aparna, I'll come to you first with a question. In your introduction, you have mentioned this radical transparency, such as this is not an easy decision. You know, uh, tell us, how did you know that you're ready to tell this story, and why is right now the right time for it?
Well, it was a lot of trial and error, I have to say. I wanted to write this book as early as 2015, but I kept wanting to write it, and I just did not have enough distance from the material. There were just too many mood swings. So I was finally actually ready, I think, in the lockdown when I actually had a period of stability. And it gave me some time, space, and distance to be able to do it. I think this is the right time because, frankly, I think during the COVID, who hasn't had a mental health issue? I think that we are all dealing with so many difficulties that I think this is a book not just about being bipolar. It's a book about mental health. So and ways that I think are quite universal in tackling it. So I think it's relevant for that reason.
Often in India, we see there is a huge taboo about confronting mental health conditions. Tell us your thoughts about it.
It's so interesting. The kind of reaction I'm getting is, at one end, in public people are all telling me I'm so courageous, but in private people are messaging me with all their problems. So people are still not comfortable sharing those problems in public, whether it's on LinkedIn or Insta or any other platform. And I think we have a long way to go, right? We have to understand that these conditions are normal, and we have to understand that any vulnerability that we deal with, it could be a disability, it could be a physical ailment, it could be a mental health condition, that these are actually what make us authentic and real. We cannot always try and be perfect people all the time. So I think having these vulnerabilities actually is part of our life, and we have to create spaces for that dialogue, just, I guess, like we're doing today. So
Absolutely. Right. So, tell us a bit about the writing process of the book. How did it? You mentioned that you wrote it during the lockdown, and you mentioned another very interesting thing, that you had a period of stability during lockdown, whereas, overall there was even though we were at one place in terms of not moving around, however, it was very unstable time for a lot of us.
yeah, so I think what lockdown did for me was, first, it I couldn't travel or do anything. There were no other distractions. So I think I just put aside of many of the other activities that I'm involved with and just focused on the book. But I also told myself before the lockdown that, listen, I have to keep this together, because if I don't have access to my doctors, if I don't have access to medication, if I don't have access to all the things that I need that to keep me stable, I just cannot afford, for the sake of my family, to not be stable during this time. So I just think I took a day at a time, and this book actually really gave me a lot of purpose during the lockdown. It became the thing that I was doing during the lockdown. A lot of people picked up hobbies and did new things, and this was the activity that gave me a lot of purpose.
Right. So, who were the first few people, the first few drafts? Who were the people you went with? What kind of the feedback that you get?
Yeah, I've sent this book to, I think, probably like a dozen or 2 dozen people before any of the readers get to read it. So that's why I think I can say a little bit with some humility and confidence both, that I think it's a decent book because so many people have read it. But the people who are very important in this process are all people who are readers. So my book club, I'm part of something called the Bombay Feminist Book Club. So they gave me a lot of feedback, and some of the draft, and my writers club. So we have a group of people who are interested in writing. So they are obviously, also professionals, and they understand the whole process of writing. And then I have a group of people who just like to read, who are very close friends, who just gave me feedback. So a lot of people gave me a lot of good feedback, actually, as well as my family, of course.
Right. So in your book, you talk about seven therapies. So tell us a bit more about this and how you came to choose about it and your personal experiences with therapies.
Yeah, so what I was very keen to do with this book was not just talk about my experience and my journey and my story, but also to talk about things that I think could help other people. And so the seven therapies are just a template for which I think any reader or caregiver or a friend or anybody could go through and say that, yeah, I think some of these ideas might work for me. And they're all, I mean, they're called therapies, but they're all actually aspects of life. So there is the medical side, which is the starting point, which is the drug therapy and the psychotherapy. Then there is what I call love therapy, which is the role of the family. Then there is, very importantly, the allies in your life, who are the mentors, the friends, the networks, the community. They play a very, very important role in any kind of recovery, I feel. Then work. I think if there's one thing that is underestimated really in mental health, it is workplaces, because that is where we spend the bulk of our day. And that is where I think we need a lot more acceptance, and we need to be able to have those kind of conversations. And where there, I think there's still a lot of stigma and resistance about coming out. So I think the role of the workplace is very important. Then there is the conversations that one has with oneself, which is very important. The self therapy, as I call it. Then finally, spiritual therapy, which I think we all understand. And finally, lifestyle. So lifestyle includes, sleep, exercise, nutrition, but also the fun stuff, right? What I call play, and how you bring joy into your life. So these are really the ways that we can look at ourselves.
Right. So would you like to talk a little bit more about the self therapy? That's uh, giving time to yourself, or understanding yourself, or having a conversation with yourself is the most important thing, I believe. So would you
Yeah,
like
so
to talk a little?
yeah, I think my self therapy really expressed itself through writing, through my journal, and I shared parts of my journal in the book also. But it's really about the self therapy for me lay in understanding the triggers for my manic episodes. Now, I have people calling me now saying, that my child might be bipolar, or my relative is bipolar, or we're dealing with this mental health condition, and they think that medication is going to solve the entire problem. But but there are actually psychological triggers for any kind of mood swings or any sort of mental health condition, so usually triggered by something. So the self therapy really helps to understand what those triggers are. Is it relationships? In my case, it lay a lot with my sense of identity, and who I was, who self realization, what is my purpose in life, what am I looking for in terms of meaning. So that was really a big kind of conversation that I was having with myself. But I think it's very important to start that conversation and to understand the triggers, and then to find a way of having that conversation. For me, was through writing. I think journaling is very helpful to anyone.
Right. So, I saw read those short journal clips, and that's why I wanted to ask you the role of writing in your life. What does writing mean to you, uh, even when you're not writing books and columns?
Yeah, I mean, writing is my sadhana. I think that there is a poem in the book that talks about, if there's nothing else, there's writing. So I think that, I think writing is my breath. It's, as I think, in yoga or in any kind of anything related to this kind of yoga or any sort of exercise like that, they concentrate so much on the breath, because that is what we always have. It is always with us, right? You cannot go
Yeah.
anywhere without your breath. Whatever you do, you have your breath with you. So writing for me is like that. Writing is always with me.
Right. So, another line that I picked up from your introduction itself is, like you said, that privilege helps to insulate against stigma. In my experience, so I would like you to talk a little bit more about women in India and them opening about their mental health issues, because there is a stigma, and when it comes to women, they generally take they do not want to come out in open about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think unfortunately the stories we hear are that women get treated so badly, right? I mean, whether they are caregivers, whether they are themselves, they have a patients and or they have a mental health condition. Anyway, I think in India we do not treat our women necessarily very well. Okay, and I think if there is a woman who has to deal with this kind of situation, it becomes even worse. But the fact is that we are the primary caregivers of our family, and families are the unit of our society. And for me, the rule is simple, that the best mom is the happy mom. And I mean, not that a woman's role is only defined by motherhood, it's not. But I'm just trying to say that for most people, if many women are mothers and caregivers, and if they don't take their own health seriously, how will they take care of anyone else?
Absolutely. In the beginning of this discussion, we touched upon COVID 19 and how COVID 19 influenced uh, bringing into the fore mental health conversation. Where do you think we should move from here while we are now coming out of the COVID 19 pandemic? And what are the important conversations that need to be started as far as mental health is concerned in India?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of residue of COVID, right? People have lost their loved ones, people have lost their jobs. People are still struggling with the whole um, aspect of working from home, the impact on relationships. There are children who are uncertain about going back to school. There's anxiety about going back to the workplace. There are so many bigger issues. So the whole mental health aspect is really referred to as the shadow pandemic. So I think it's really important to kind of, for organizations particularly, to take a step back and to take some responsibility in having this conversation, because they're really well placed to be doing that. Schools, colleges, families, yes, these are always the places where people think of mental health and they think of these. But I really think that organizations also have to look at how they can help their people during this time.
Absolutely. Um, Before I conclude, I would like you to speak to us a little bit about your special message to people who are in caregiving roles, to people who are dealing with mental health issues.
Yeah, so I don't know if it sounds a little bit simplified, but I have a simplified 3T formula, which is that I think the first T is trust. I think that only when caregivers and patients trust each other, and particularly the patient trust the caregiver, can the caregiver help? Because if the trust is not there, then it's very difficult. And it's really important that the trust is built up during times, as I call it, during peacetime, so that when there is that wartime or that battle time, the trust is improved. So that trust is really important. Then trigger management. I was talking earlier about triggers, that caregivers are very well placed to see the triggers, and it's important to have the trust so that they can tell the person that, look, I can see this happening, and the person is willing to listen. Because otherwise what happens is that the patient is not willing to listen to what the challenges are. So that trigger management is really important. And the third part is the therapy. I think that caregivers might think that therapy is only for the patient or the person with the mental health condition, but caregivers have so much burnout that they also need someone to talk to. May not be necessarily a therapist, but if there's someone else that they can talk to, if they have some safe spaces or support networks, those are really important. But therapy, I think, always helps, and it should be extended and be available for them also.
Right? I mean, that's a wonderful thought. The three T's: trust, trigger management, and therapy. So, I mean, would you like to emphasize last about therapy? Because I felt that there is therapies are very important in getting out of mental health conditions. Would you like to talk something about that?
Yeah, I think that one has to learn to live with these conditions, because they're not going to go away. And so you have to look at something that helps you learn to live with it. So all of these therapies, I think, help you. Formal therapy in the form of psychotherapy is really important. Even though I've been stable now for 4 years, I still speak to my therapist twice a week. Sorry, not twice a week, twice a month. And it's really part of my it's part of my existence. And for me, it's really normal to say that, right? It's normal to say I go to a therapist, I have a psychiatrist when I need them. and I take these medications that I need to take. That's what lets me be who I am, and I'm stronger because of that. It's that's what I mean when I say that when you have a vulnerability and you can ask for help and you can tackle it, then you actually end up being a lot stronger than you might have been otherwise.
Right. Thank you so much for joining with us. It's indeed been a pleasure talking to you, and I
Thank you.
wish you good luck with the book.
Thanks a lot. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.